I am joined this hour by noted hate monger, vicious bigot, a misogynistic, transphobic friend of mine. His name is Matt Walsh. He is the erstwhile #1 best-selling LGBT author in the United States, author of Johnny the Walrus, a really tremendous children's book, and most recently the star of an episode of Dr. Phil. Matt, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for that introduction. I really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Quite accurate in all.
So, Matt, you just, for the handful of people who had not heard of you in the country, they just heard of you because you went viral after being invited onto the Dr. Phil daytime talk show, where you were brought on to defend the view that men can't become women, and you were debating this position with a very sexually ambiguous person who looked somewhat like a woman, but also had a beard, and it was extraordinarily confusing.
Yeah, it was. I was on there with two. They were diversity consultants, and one was, I believe, one's trans, one identifies as non-binary. Was a man who kind of presents as a woman. The other was a female who presents as a man. And I think they were also a romantic couple as well, but wow. not that any of that matters. Yeah. And I'm also, there was also a professor, kind of a woke professor there as well. And I think she's a communications professor, and for some reason she was brought on to talk about gender. And along with the entire studio audience. And the interesting thing, of course, so I'm kind of outnumbered on the stage for most of the discussion. Yeah. Then they brought a couple other sane people up towards the end. And people have asked me, well, are you nervous going into that environment, knowing you're going to be outnumbered, you're in front of a hostile audience? And the thing is, if this was any kind of complicated subject that required me to be intelligent and well-spoken, I would have absolutely been nervous. I probably would have said no. But if my position is simply that individuals with penises are men, like that's my, and if you can give birth, you're a woman, then there's nothing to be afraid of. You could walk in front of any audience, doesn't matter at all, because your position is very, very simple. And of course, what we know, and if you watch the episode, what you see them try to do is, because you have simplicity on your side, because the truth is simple here, and so they're going to try to constantly. They can't engage with you, so they're going to try to pull you into the weeds and make everything seem really obscure and complicated.
You just don't understand.
Right, exactly. And so all you have to do, and unfortunately, I see people on the right get sucked into that all the time. But you just stay on the firm ground of what is the simple truth of the matter, and don't leave from there. Let them equivocate and hang around in the weeds. You just stay on your firm ground of truth, and I think it all works out.
One real takeaway I had from your appearance on Dr. Phil, which, I haven't watched a ton of daytime TV in recent years, so I really think you brought that to a whole new audience. Besides just understanding that you were right and these Looney Tunes on the other side were extremely mistaken, it actually made me question the value of dialogue with the people who share basically no premises with you. They're completely on the other side. We're always told that it's so important that we speak to people who have totally opposing views to us. But is that important? Is there anything fruitful that is going to come out of talking to someone who just simply doesn't share any first principles?
So you're saying when you hear me speak, it makes you question the value of dialogue at all? That's how effective of a communicator.
Compliment somehow.
I during that episode, I'm not sure how much of it made it onto air, but towards the end, Dr. Phil himself was talking about it. I thought he was very fair, by the way, in the way that he kind of navigated this and refereed it. But towards the end, he was trying to find some sort of positive takeaway from all this. And so he was talking about how, hey, like there's a value of conversation. We've had a conversation here, and so this only shows that we could keep talking about this issue and all of that. But I'm thinking the exact same thing as you. Is that if anything, this is proven that you can't talk to these people, but there's still value in the conversation, because the way that I look at it, when I'm talking about this issue or talking to someone in front of an audience, this is really for the audience, because there are a lot of people. Someone who's totally fallen into gender ideology, you're not going to be able to retrieve them from it through one conversation. And so as far as that conversation goes, they're kind of hopeless, unfortunately. But there are a lot of just normal, sane people out there who understand how crazy this is, but they've been conditioned. They live in an environment where this is shoved down their throat every second of the day. Maybe after a while, they start to question their own sanity, and they start to think, well, I don't know. I mean, I think that only women can give birth, but everyone is shouting at me that it's different. So maybe they're right. And then for them, I think there are a lot of people that are sort of on the cusp of buying into this, and they can be rescued. All they need to hear is some normal person saying, no, you're right about what you thought to begin with, and what everybody thought up until 15 seconds ago. You're right about that. It's okay to have that viewpoint, and let me show you how right you are. I think that's where the value comes in.
So the point of the dialogue is not the Looney Tune that you're talking to very often, but it's the spectators. It's how there are two different kinds of debate. There's debate when you go sit with someone over a cigar late at night, private environment, and you try to persuade one another of what you think. And if you share at least certain basic premises, maybe you'll succeed in that. And then there's public debate, which is you're just trying to clobber the other guy. You're trying to say, that guy's wrong, my view's right, and it's up to the audience to decide. I think that's a good point. Obviously, we need to persuade people, and so we need to present our views. They need to get a hearing in public. But it is amazing because though we live in this world now where everything has to be empirical and based on some study, and we have to have the evidence for every single thing, a lot of our public debates boil down to first principles. If I think that human beings are just walking meat puppets, just bags of chemicals where everything that we hope for and love and feel joy over, it's really just an illusion caused by synapses just squirting out chemicals. And when we die, we turn to worm food and take a dirt nap. That I'm going to have a very different understanding of the world than someone who thinks that man is made in the image and likeness of God. And how do you convince someone to go over to the other side?
Yeah, it's true. Although the interesting thing is that even if you start from that first premise of that we're all meat puppets and biological machines and so on, I mean, even from that premise, you still can't really get to transgenderism. Mm-hmm. So that's what makes this so interesting. That's one of the reasons why I was maybe a little bit surprised when you look at the reaction to the Dr. Phil episode. It's been overwhelmingly positive. I mean, overwhelming. You can even go to Dr. Phil's YouTube page and you can look at the clips that he posted and just read some of the comments. And that's not always a scientific way of determining public opinion, but it can be revealing. And it's just overwhelmingly on the side of sanity here. And what that tells me is that like most people understand how crazy this is. And in a way, people are sort of, I guess you have to give people permission to be sane, in this environment. And that's one thing that we can do that's important. But then it's also frustrating because I know there's some conservatives that take solace in this idea of the silent majority, but it's also frustrating in a way because, well, if we're the majority, why are we silent? Yeah. And if 90% of people or 99% know how crazy this is, which I think they do, then why have we allowed any of this to happen? I mean, why is it that you can go anywhere in the country and there are men competing against women in women's sports and men in the women's restroom and all that kind of stuff? It shows the power that we have, and it also shows that this other side breaks down in an instant. All you have to do is just turn and face it and ask one simple question, and it breaks down. And yet, to this point, we really haven't done that, and that's the frustrating part.
People need some limits. When I watch you talking to gender ambiguous people, and you don't know if it's a man or a woman, and it seems to me that self-expression has gone a little bit too far. And I saw this the other day. I'd love for you to weigh in since you are a self-described theocratic fascist. There's a town up in Alaska, Kenai, Alaska, and at their assembly meeting in this town, they have an individual come up and present an invocation. This is just part of the way the assembly operates. And anyone can go do it. So, you get a Presbyterian goes up there, gives an invocation, or a Catholic, or a Methodist. So recently, they had a Satanist go up and give a satanic invocation. I am told by the liberals and by some people on the right even, that this is the meaning of religious liberty. Matt, if you and I want religious liberty in this country, then we need to allow some of our representatives to publicly worship Satan in government buildings. Have they missed something?
Yeah, I think they have. That reminds me of, I think, there was a school system somewhere last week or 2 weeks ago that had an after-school Satan club. And so it's kind of along those lines. And that's why I know you have been as well. I'm critical of what you hear, even on the right, about what we really want is open dialogue, and we want alternative viewpoints to be allowed. And this is all about openness and everything. And even when these people on the right are complaining about conservative views being banned from campuses, they always frame their complaint as one of wanting just openness and free expression,
academic freedom.
Right. But that's not really the problem. The problem is that it's not that freedom is being banned from campus. It's that truth. We're seeing truth being edged out of education. Education has to be grounded in truth, or otherwise it's not education at all. And so I think that's the way we need to start talking about it. What is true?
This guy, he's saying that men are not women. He's saying Satan should not be hailed and worshipped in our government. You're everything they say about you, Matt. A theocratic fascist, a monster. But thank you, at least, for clarifying the positions. And this is a fruitful dialogue. Others, maybe not so much. Matt Walsh, go check out the Matt Walsh Show.